What's good, everyone? It's your boy Salos, and let me tell you something, okay? I am a pretty passionate Roy fan, okay? Roy is one of the first video game characters I've ever known. My love with him started back with my sister's friend, Jessie. I can say her name because there are like a million Jessies in the world. If you guys want to try to find her, good luck. But I remember that she was the one who introduced me to Super Smash Brothers. She I wouldn't say she was she kind of was a tomboy, but she would always come over and she knew how to GameCube, and she didn't really have anyone to play with. Well, my sister wasn't really a tomboy. They just kind of bonded over other things. But she would bring her game over because she knew how to GameCube. She didn't have anyone to play with. So she would play with me. And her main was Marth. And I just kind of looked at the cast. I was like, okay, Mewtwo. I know Mewtwo. He's a Pokemon. He's pretty cool. Didn't really click with him that well. Then I tried doing a little bit of Young Link for a little bit, and then he didn't really clash either. And then I landed on Roy. I don't know what about Roy captured me, but I think it was like the whole fire aesthetic. I just thought he was like just so cool. His name too. I was like the name Roy. I thought it just sounded so awesome. So the whole fire aspect, the name, his name sounded cool. It was easy to pronounce. I was like, what game is Roy from? And she was like, the same game as Marth. And I was like, what game is Marth from? She was like, I don't know. But she was a Marth main, and you guys know about Melee Marth. She wasn't hardcore competitive or anything, but that was just a character that she just resonated with. It just so happened that she resonated with one of the best characters in the game. But that's besides the point. But all I know is that she would repeatedly beat me down again and again and again and again and again. And this went on for months that I just could not beat this Marth. And finally, after I finally just focused and got real serious, that's when I finally was able to beat her Marth. So for me, there's always like this little bit of rivalry between Marth and Roy. I know that's just a thing because as I grew up, I learned that Roy is a clone of Marth, but it's kind of just transpired throughout everything that they've been compared to. And I bring this whole backstory up because this has happened again. It happened when Roy was new, that there's a lot of legendary Marth and legendary Roy comparisons because Marth was effective against dragons, Roy was effective against dragons. Marth had Bones Double in his weapon, Roy introduced Bones Double as a skill. They were functionally very similar units that they liked to get buffs, they amplified those buffs, and they both killed dragons. So it was always a question on who was better. And it was always a teeter-totter. It was like, well, Roy has this encounter. If you prefer that, then that's fine. But if you want to be a melee specialist, then Marth. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. I really wanted them to, I didn't even press what this video is about, but you guys can read the title, you know what this video is about. But I really wanted them to make Roy a distant counter monster, because in my opinion, that's the only way you can beat Marth, because let's be honest, Marth got an amazing refine. Even I did that refine. I was reluctant to do it, but Marth's refine is insane. Marth is like I think that legendary Marth is actually better than Brave Marth. That's how cracked that refine is. So I had some pretty high expectations for Roy to become this distant counter demon and distant counter this. So I do all this setup. This is like a 4-minute intro, but I'm taking the time to make this intro because I want you guys to understand that I am a Roy stan for life. He is one of my favorite video game characters. I've played through his games, and it started with that, but I just resonate with Roy as just a character. That's a video for itself. I'm not going to make it any longer than it needs to be. But I just want to make this point clear that this is coming from a place of love because I want nothing but the best for Roy. When he sucks, I will call him out that he sucks. I will say he sucks because I want him to be better. That I did the same thing in Smash 4. People were like, oh, Roy's not bad. No, Roy was bad in Smash 4. He needed help. Please give my boy some love. And in response, he became one of the best characters in Smash Ultimate. So I'm going to be very hard and refined, not just because I want to dick on Roy or whatever, or I think that he got quote unquote robbed. I'm just going to be very honest. And also, even more transparency, you guys have noticed that Faye content has slowed down, and there's been a lot of Monster Hunter on the channel. That's because I've just kind of slowed down in Faye. Like when I was making these Faye analysis and Faye videos, I was consistently staying in like Vault of Heaven and tier 21. That's not that really the case anymore. There are some weeks where I go as low as tier 17 arena. There are some, like, I think that I pretty much stay in tier 21 in Aether raids. I think my most competitive mode is PvP. See, I can't even recall the name off the top of my head. But I think I'm like in gold tier on Summer Duel rank. There we go, Summer Duels. That's what I was trying to say. But my point is that I'm not as competitive as I used to be, so I'm not as crisp with the meta, which is why I didn't really feel too confident on making those videos, because I don't want to talk to you guys about some BS. I want to give you guys actual information that's going to help you guys be better as players. But this is just a special occasion, so my God, this is a 6 minutes introduction. But with all that set up, with all that said, you guys understand where I stand with Roy, and I want to make an honest video on how good I think Roy's Refined actually is. So now you guys know I'm quote-unquote casual with Faye now. You guys understand it's coming from a place of love. So without any further introductions, let's finally talk about how good is Roy's Refined actually. So let's start with Human Virtues 2, okay? So basically what this is saying is that Roy gets attack speed plus 6. He gives that to his allies, and then he'll take those buffs and then he'll use them for himself, making him essentially a global blade tome unit. But the problem with being a global blade tome unit is two things. It reminds you of the OG global blade tome unit being Ashura. And the reason why Ashura is so good, because I actually do use Ashura on offense, is that one, she provides no panic. So that also enables other units who want to use buffs and not be afraid to just get those units buffs taken away from you by just panic ploy or panic towers and Aether raids, whatever have you, panic smoke. There are plenty of ways to get rid of buffs, right? So the fact that Roy doesn't give any protection to that to himself or his allies just means that you can very easily just kind of whittle him down and weaken him by taking away the buffs by what have you. Sure, you're not going to always run into units who have that counterplay, because people don't really run buffs like that anyway outside of Summoner Duels and sometimes Arena because scoring reasons. But yeah, that was kind of unfortunate that he would have been very good if he had a way to provide no panic to himself or his allies. The second thing is that restriction. There are two restrictions on them that make Ashura just strictly better. One, they have to be within 2 spaces of Roy. And on some maps, that just simply isn't possible. Like, you'll see this in some of my replays, that it's just not happening. That the maps are so constricted, that they're so limited on what you can and can't do, that sometimes it just won't happen. So that's also one thing that Ashura, she doesn't matter if we are 2 spaces or she's across the map, if their opponents are across the map, if they're within 2 spaces or not, she's just going to take those buffs anyway and nuke you. And I think that that's very flexible on how you play the game, because we all play Faye a little differently. So forcing Roy to stick with his team, I get that. That's his whole thing, human virtue. He believes in the faith of mankind or whatever. But it's like, that's just not going to help him. Because sometimes he's going to have to push ahead. Sometimes he'll be able to turtle back, sure, whatever. But sometimes, realistically, you're not going to be able to stick with your team the entire match. I mean, I guess that's good for Summoner Duels, but you're facing actual players, and they're not going to crash into things that they're going to die for, okay? They're just not going to do that unless they're just giving up. So I feel like Ashura is just strictly better. And the one thing of the whole racist Roy meme, say whatever you will about that, but he can't buff beast or allies. And I think that's more relevant now than ever, because really think about how many good beast units we have. We just got Pan's Refined on this same batch. I know that people are in a mixed bag about that. Pan fans, she got robbed, but non-Pan fans users say that she's amazing. I think she got a great Refined, but I don't use Pan, so that's not for me to say here or there. But I think that Pan came out pretty good on this. Then we got Nate Sala, who I'm personally using. He's only +3 right now, but Nate Sala got a very good Refine. Only at +3, he is destroying like +10 vectors, plus 10 monster whale units. So he came out pretty good out of all this. We got Caden, who just became a support god. And I know Randolph kind of got shafted a little bit because Caden was in the same batch, but Randolph is pretty good. If you have one, don't sleep on Randolph's Refined. He got pretty good too. We got Fallen Rhea, who is an amazing near save tank. We got Fallen Edelgard, who need I say more? My point is that there are a lot of very good dragons and beasts in this game that just cannot be used if you're using Roy. So just the fact that you can't just slap him on them and just use him as a support unit for any team competition, that kind of sucks a little bit. So it's like Ashura, like I said, if you want a buffer, if you want a global blade tome user, use Ashura. If you want to have a support unit that gives buffs, use Ashura, because she also provides no panic, which Roy does not do. So that was a little disappointing. And the whole damage reduction on the first attack, I don't even get why that first attack clause is there, man, because there are some units who just have auto doubles, and I know you can run things like, what am I trying to say? You can run things like no follow-up to stop like auto follow-up weapons. But you also have weapons that have brave hits, like the whole summer units. The summer units, there are whole things that they hit you twice in a row, and now we have an inheritable weapon that does the same thing. It's like, you have a lot of units that do that. You have Linja, you have Ninjorin, you have Winterlight Scythia. There are quite a few units in the game that can just hit you twice in a row. So even with no follow-up being in the equation, there are some times where even that's not going to save you. It helps a lot, but... And then it's that whole 2 spaces clause. I don't get why they had to be in 2 spaces. Why can't you just say on your team? Why did you have to put a restriction on Roy? It's like, even if that restriction wasn't there, this wouldn't be that great of a refine. It's like, why did you have to put that restriction there? Even at maximum value, 40% damage reduction, that's just free on so many heroes. There are some units who get 40 damage reduction just by existing. Why did you have to put this clause? Why is this 2 space clause a thing? Okay, you stack that with Spurn that he gets in his weapon. Whoop-de-freaking-do. The first attack is reduced by at maximum 58% because Fey math, damage reduction is multiplicative, not additive. So, whoop-de-freaking-do. 58 damage reduction. He can tank relatively well, but really this all rides on his refine. When I read this, I was like, okay, this refine has to either give himself no panic, or it's got to be some crazy stacked refine. So let's see what his refine actually is. So his refine is Dragonbind, and every time I read that, because of Goosephone, I can't unhear her saying that Dragonbind just sounds like a dragon condom. Let me just keep reading. Effective against dragon foes. Unit can counterattack regardless of range. Okay, we all knew that. At the start of combat, if unit's HP is above or equal to 25% HP, grants attack speed, defense res +4, and special cooldown charge +1 per attack, and neutralizes effects that inflict special cooldown charge -X on unit during combat. So at the end of the day, looking at the full picture, any ally within 2 spaces of Roy, he gives himself and all of his allies +6 attack and speed. On top of that, if he's above 25% HP, he gives himself attack speed, defense res +4. So at total, he has +10 attack and speed. Quotes around that because you can debuff him. He has no way to stop debuffs. So huge quotes on that. And anyone who is buffed within him, within his radius, he takes their buffs and uses them for himself. And keep in mind that you can just take away their buffs, so whatever. On top of that, he gets Special Fighter and Omni +4. That's the entirety of Roy's Refine. Now, I don't want to undersell Special Fighter, because Special Fighter is very, very, very strong. We have seen that with base Eliwood with Blazing Durandal. We saw how Eliwood went from 0 to hero. Like, I cannot, if you guys don't remember how impactful Eliwood was. Eliwood was like up there with Reinhardt as the Sword Cav hero. Like whenever Sword Cav came out, he basically invalidated every single one of them. Even like even if they were the star of the banner, it didn't matter. If you were a Sword Cav, you were compared to Eliwood. And 9 times out of 10, you weren't beating Eliwood in that competition. Even if they outstatted him. Like Eliwood's Refined was that insane that for about a good 2 years, Eliwood was the definitive Sword Cav hero, and it wasn't even up for debate. Nowadays, that's not really a thing. Nowadays, I think we have some better Sword Cavs than Eliwood. He started to fall off a little bit, but that just goes to show you how powerful of a refined special fighter is on non-armored units. So the fact that Roy gets this, and thank you to Oblivion Knife for opening my eyes to this, that he actually becomes a pretty good Gale Forcer if that's your thing. I mean, unfortunately, you can't run Time Pulse because it's in his C slot. You can't run Quicken Pulse for a one-time to get in, and because of the reason I just said, that he will get low enough to be in the Wings of Mercy range, and you can use him as a Wings of Mercy beacon for the rest of your team. So he has uses, he has places, but ultimately it goes back to how I started the video. I feel like if they really wanted to do Roy justice, they would have made him to a distant counter monster. They would have honed in on that aspect, because that's kind of what they did for base Roy. But even then, he was just a mediocre distant counter unit. He never really made that his own, because you still had to give him distant counter. So I feel like this was like their perfect opportunity to make him a distant counter monster. And they went with the whole global blade tome aspect, which, like I've been emphasizing, isn't bad. It's still pretty good. It just wasn't enough for a unit like Roy, who was already struggling. And you guys can see I have a +8 Roy. So I've been using Roy for the entirety of this entire time. And I can tell you that Roy was like unusable. I'll say at least now, I'm showing you all my clips that I've done on my recent arena run. And he still does die. He dies more times than I can count. But there are some times where Roy has legitimately surprised me. There are times where he tanked a Black Luna. There were times where he took 2 hits from Fallen Eogar with a Bonfire proc at +10 max investment. So Roy, he's not unusable. If you want to use him, you can use him, and he will give you some results. But I feel like when you compare him to, again, the whole comparison to Legendary Marth and Roy, there is no comparison. He once again is in Marth's shadow. Because I use my Legendary Marth quite a bit. And whatever Legendary Marth goes against, he just deletes. There are very few units in the game that I just initiate Legendary Marth on, and he does not just outright one-shot. Maybe a few blue lineage, maybe not even Fallen Rhea, maybe like Vector. That's really the only unit I can think of that I've tried to initiate on, and they didn't instantly explode. And that's not the case with Roy. He still has to put in a lot of work to make him into that type of distant counter demon, or any type of demon. The best thing I can say is the ability he sees, the best way I can think to run him is to use attack speed unity, because it falls to that whole 2 space clause that you have to respect. You can't go outside 2 spaces, because if you go too far from the herd, then Roy's just gonna die. So that, at least for his offenses, that keeps his attack and speed. And if you try to debuff it, then he'll make that his own power, and that also stacks with his damage reduction. So I will say that much, at least, that I feel like this Refine is perfectly made for attack speed unity. And then Spurn or no follow up, whichever one you prefer. No Sea Disrupt as well if you really want to go that route. But I personally have found more success with just stacking damage reduction. I know that most times it seems like overkill, but I honestly do think that Roy needs it. I think that his Refine is just that underwhelming. So to end the video off, do I think Roy was robbed? Yes. Yes, I do. I will just be completely honest with you, if you want to build a legendary, if you want to do any of these older units that they've remixed, I will say, I think that legendary Ryoma is super slept on. I use my legendary Ryoma for just about every type of content in the game, and he just kills everything. Like there, even the summer duels. Like there are some maps that, there are some team compositions where I just kind of buff up my Ryoma. I use legendary Azure to give him no panic. I just kind of park him on a defensive tile, and the enemy teams just kind of back off. And I don't think that's the case that Roy's going to be doing. Like, you can make Ryoma a pretty stupid unit. Like, I have seen my Ryoma take some stuff on that even I thought he was going to die from. And the enemy team just kind of backs off because in summer duels, you're fighting actual players. Like I said, actual players aren't just going to crash into a unit that they're not going to beat. So when I see them backing off, I'm like, oh, you can't do anything about this. And I just kind of use that to my advantage to win. And I don't think that's the case for Roy. So even in the vacuum of legendary remixes, I think that you should just go with Ryoma. And even more so, as much as it pains me to say this, I think you should just build legendary Marth. I will say that if you want a distant counter unit, that, yeah, don't give Marth distant counter. You have to use him as a melee specialist because of how Fire Emblem works and Shining Emblem and the Binding Shield and whatnot. This isn't a Marth video, so I'm not going to go into all that. But that's my long and short. If I were to give him a rating, I would give him a 7 out of 10. I almost said 6. I'm going to go with no, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to say a 7 out of 10 because you can't use him as a Gale Forcer. He is serviceable enough. And you guys have been seeing the gameplay in the background. He's not a bad unit. It just wasn't what he needed. Like I said, it's that whole stupid 2 space clauses, but I'm not going to get stuck up on that. That's my long and short of it. I wish that he got better, but it is what it is. This is what we're stuck with. So if you want to build him, you can. I'm going to finish him out to plus 10 because I already have him at plus 8. So when his remix comes around, I'm going to go ahead and spark him, and I hope I can get one along the way and just be done with it. But it is what it is. No use crying over spilled milk. He's usable by technical definition. He's just not going to be very meta impactful. That's my honest review on Roy. You guys were asking, that's how I feel. So thank you guys so much for watching till the end. And until next time, I will catch you guys on the next one. Whether that's Monster Hunter or whatever else. Thank you guys for watching as always, because I would not be here without any of you. With all that, about to get up out. Catch you guys later. Until then, deuces.